Hi, it is a pleasure to be here today. I'm Renee Gittens, the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA. And today I'm going to talk to you about something you already know, which is 2020 kind of sucks. But I want to talk to you about how the IGDA is working to make it better. So we're going to be going over the resources, events, and other things the IGDA is doing to help you through these difficult times. So first, for those who are not familiar with the IGDA, we are a nonprofit professional association, the largest in the world, that represents game developers, individual game developers. And it is our mission to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. Now, we achieve that mission through three main pillars approaches. The first of which is knowledge. Knowledge consists of research papers, best practices, webinars just like this one, and other resources for game developers to improve their current skill set, to have a better understanding of the industry and the state of their business, and truly how to succeed. The second of those pillars is community. Community is extremely important to the IGDA because it is the network of the developers around the world that allows each of us to be successful. We think that community is particularly important because we can share ideas and support each other through times that are difficult like this, as well as the good times. And then finally, our last pillar is advocacy. We do everything we can to ensure that the game industry is putting its best foot forward and the concerns of the developers themselves are being brought into conversations, important conversations such as government regulation of loot boxes, or industry standards and best practices, or harassment within the industry. We advocate for the voice of developers in those conversations so that they can be heard. And in fact, that's why the IGDA was originally founded. So speaking of the community part of the IGDA has 35 special interest groups. These groups are all global groups, and they are spread across advocacy, discipline, and affinity. So, for example, some of our affinity groups are Blacks in Gaming, Women in Games, LGBTQ+. And then on the discipline side, we have quality assurance, game writers, game designers, business and legal even. And for advocacy, we have SIGs like our new SIG, the Climate SIG, that are working to make the world better through games and advocating for important parts of video games and the game industry. Now, we also have local communities. We have over 100 chapters, local chapters around the globe. And these chapters support their local communities by running various events and allowing for developers to network with people that they can work with locally. Now, of course, not all of these events are going on right now. Many of them have moved to virtual, but usually these events are running game jams, job fairs, things like that. And it is the leaders that help organize these events that truly contribute to the industry and other volunteers who are working on things like white papers and research papers and other resources for the benefit of all game developers. So we have been advocating for developers. Here's some examples of the things that we did over the last year. We really took strong stances against crunch, on ethics, and against harassment within the game industry and the wider game industry. We really made sure that game developers' voices were heard on important subjects like the loot boxes that I mentioned. We were able to attend a FTC, which is a US-based organization, a US government organization, panel about the discussion of loot boxes. We worked with companies and government organizations in Europe about online child safety discussions. And we have really kept up on the current industry events and any turmoil within the industry. We also developed our own game industry standards, which cover event diversity, ethics, and other topics, which you can find on our website. One of the aspects of research that we did was we looked into COVID-19 and its effects on game developers. We were looking at how the pandemic was affecting work-life balance, how it was affecting day-to-day productivity, how it was affecting mental health and attitude and effectiveness overall. And surveys like this, where you acquire hard numbers that describe the state of an industry, are very important for looking for resources from governments or making arguments to changes to support developers through these times. One of the things we also did to support game developers through the global pandemic and recession was we partnered with Take This to run a free online conference and webinar series called the Game Development Crisis Conference. This was a conference that was tailored specifically to assist game developers through turbulent times, and it covered topics from managing remote teams to overcoming technical pipeline difficulties with remote development to self-care and mental health. This was a really great conference, and I highly recommend you check out all of these talks. They're available completely free on the IGDA YouTube, but if you're struggling or having any difficulties right now, I highly recommend checking it out. One of the other timely talks and events that we ran is we provided a voice for Black game developers during the summer, and of course continue to. So we ran Black in Games panels to provide a perspective and shine a light on Black game developers and how they felt about the current situations and discussions that were going on in the world. We have also started working on the development of new resources, including an inclusive game design and development white paper. And this white paper is being advised by the diversity and discipline-based special interest groups within the IGDA. So if you're also interested in this white paper or contributing to it, please reach out to me and let me know, because it truly takes a community to create wonderful resources like that. The IGDA, in addition to the conference and these webinars and panel series, has actually relaunched our own webinar. We've had well over 40 talks and panels over the last year. We are now hosting webinars on a near weekly basis. They're all hosted for free on Twitch. So again, if you're interested in listening to them, subscribe to our Twitch or subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are constantly putting on new free content, and they're extremely interesting. You can easily browse the subjects, and I assure you they will be beneficial to you. Similar to this conference, we have a Discord. I didn't update the number here, but we have nearly 3,000 game developers on that Discord. And it has active discussions. Particularly the advice channel is doing really well. It's great to see people coming in, whether they are students or even mid and senior year developers, asking for advice on how to run a project or pursue something, and it, I think, is extremely beneficial. And then we are also have launched many new programs. This includes a IGDA game showcase where all members of the IGDA who are working on a title that is soon to go into funding or launch can promote the title along our channels. We really make sure to highlight these games and get additional eyes on them. We also launched, and this is probably the thing I'm most excited about, a global mentorship program. This mentorship program pairs game developers with mentors. And we ensured to create this with mid-career developers in mind. So certainly students can be paired with developers, but we really wanted to create a resource for mid and senior level developers to find mentorship if they are having difficulty having mentorship or receiving mentorship within their own companies. If you're a mid-level developer at a small studio, or if you're a senior level developer at a large studio, it can occasionally be difficult to get the mentorship you need. And sometimes it's really nice to have someone outside of your company to bounce ideas off of, talk about potential career next steps. So this mentorship program has been extremely popular, and we've seen really great results in people who have been able to make confident steps in their career due to the mentorship that they've received. As I mentioned before, we also created those game industry standards covering ethics, crunch, event diversity, and game crediting as well, thanks to our game crediting special interest group. One of the things that we run every other year, and we're about to run soon, is the IGDA Developer Satisfaction Survey. The results for this survey came out in March, I believe, of this last year, from the 2019 survey. This survey, again, is important because it provides tracking of the state of the game industry with hard numbers, and we can see the changes and growth within the industry itself. Overall, I think that this survey showed a lot of positive direction and traction. For example, we saw the percentage of women identifying game developers increase within the industry by almost 10% of what it was last time we checked. Now that is relative, so it means like 2% total, but it went from 22% to 24%. And we have seen other positive changes in the game industry as well. For example, the average age of a game developer has increased. This means that more developers are feeling confident staying within the industry. We believe we're seeing less burnout from the game industry, which means hopefully that the game industry or individual companies within it has become more supportive and allows people to continue their careers for multiple years within it. Similarly, we actually have seen an increase in the number of game developers who have children. This is, again, a positive aspect because usually when you see not many people within an industry having children, it's either a very young industry, the people who are within it are young, or it is an unstable industry and people do not feel confident starting families while working within it. So the fact that more game developers are parents and within the game industry means that they are feeling more supported to start their families while working within the game industry, which I think is very positive. For supporting students within the game industry through these turbulent times, we launched the Ejam, and we do plan to run this next year as well. The Ejam was a virtual game jam for students, and it was targeted at students to support them throughout the summer when they might have had internships canceled due to the pandemic, or they had opportunities to do class projects taken away because they were no longer going to schooling in person. And it was targeted at high school and college students. We connected over 300 students with professional game development mentors. We had over 250,000 viewers look at their projects and hear about the event while on our Twitch stream. And we allowed students to get access to resources and experience that they wouldn't have otherwise. And very heartwarmingly, I've been told by a number of students that they were able to successfully start their careers due to the benefits and the connections that they made through this game jam. So I wanted to first thank everyone for their support of the IGDA. We are only able to make these changes and improvements because of the support of game developers and companies around the world. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about what we're looking at for 2021. So understanding that, of course, the game industry is a very flexible and fast-paced industry, the IGDA is always looking at supporting game developers in the best way that suits them at that time. We are also looking to support the next generation of game developers, which is extremely important to us. We are going to be running a IGDA Holiday Cheer Hackathon starting just under 2 weeks from today on December 18th through January 3rd. This hackathon is targeted at game developers, and it is a hackathon, not a game jam, because we want to support developers in working on creations that they can be excited about and that can give them a break from their day-to-day grind if you are feeling burnt out. The hackathon, therefore, is going to encourage the creation of holiday cards or songs or stories. And it's okay even if you're not celebrating a holiday during this season. It's really and truly inclusive event, and we're inviting people from around the world, our chapters, our special interest groups, to share what this season means to them, what their traditions are, what they're excited about, and what they would like to share with the wider community. So if you're interested in joining that hackathon, I highly recommend just checking our website. You can find it under our events tab. And if you have children who are in the elementary through high school level, we are working with Legends of Learning to launch a program for encouraging game development in schools to teach project management, problem solving, technical writing, and more. So we have a 4-week lesson course designed to just require, an hour or two of direct lesson within the classroom, and then empower students to pursue it as they wish outside of that time. For students, ideally in the middle school and high school level, but it is written so that students even below that age can participate. We are encouraging paper prototyping as much as we are digital game development and prototyping. And really the focus is on that process that we're also familiar with of designing a game, prototyping the game, building that prototype, and iterating upon it with user testing and other methods of feedback. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. I realize I have talked a lot about what the IGDA is doing and ways that we can empower you. So I wanted to open the floor to see if anyone had questions about the IGDA, and to thank Jay for having me here. Hi, Jay.
So we did already have a question come in from Discord. With the move of so much stuff to digital this year, what have you wanted to do but haven't been able to do?
I think that personally, making connections and networking in person is the most empowering thing that communities can do. Maybe it's because I'm a very, expressive person with my hands and face when I'm talking to people. But really, the IGDA had planned a suite of new approaches to our in-person events for GDC and Gamescom, and I was really, really excited for those, and we put a ton of planning time into them. So it was really unfortunate when those events had to be canceled, understandably canceled, clearly. But what I'm really looking forward to when this pandemic is over, when we can all see each other again, is creating those connections and providing those networks and support to people when they meet in person. Because I think, at least to me, that is something special. Though I will admit one advantage of so many conferences moving to digital, so many networking opportunities being digital, is it is a great equalizer. Because if you didn't have the funds to travel to conferences, you are now supported with more opportunities for those conferences.
What Luck says, I joined the Discord and it looks like Estonia even has a chapter. Yes, there are a lot of them. And, I founded one here in Western North Carolina, and I would wager right now the Estonia one has more people than ours because I made the brilliant decision to start it like literally right as the pandemic hit in a college town. So I have been actively going out and trying to gather people from around the state. And I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter where you are anymore. We're all digital anyway. I mean, has the move, taking another angle at that same question, has the move to digital opened up opportunities, and where would you want to expand on that in 2021?
Yeah, the move to digital absolutely has opened up many opportunities. The ability to start many of these online programs that are really global in nature, such as the Ejam and our Game Development Crisis Conference, and soon to be this holiday cheer hackathon, are really great opportunities that truthfully we probably wouldn't have had the time to manage if we were handling all of our in-person events. And how those support the global community, I think, is extremely important. And now that we've done them all once, it will allow us to do them more easily in the future. Because as I'm sure you're aware, getting all of the structure set up the first time is the most difficult. And once you have that, it's a lot easier to repeat it or iterate on it. So I'm looking forward to making the Ejam, making the Holiday Cheer Hackathon a yearly event that the IGDA has every year.
No, I don't want to shut up, Renee. I mean, having one person gather 30 some speakers together for 3 days of scheduled tracks that's not hard at all. I don't get it. The fact that I really like the fact that there's that statistic about, people in the industry with kids, because, it's like, why is it a very immature industry, or is it very unstable? And I'm like, hey, we're both. We hit all the
we're getting older and more of us are becoming parents. So it's improving. And I do think that's a good sign. We had previously found that an average game developer goes through 2.2 companies every 5 years, which is, I'm sure you're aware, remarkably unstable for any industry. So seeing that stability increase, seeing the confidence in that stability increase is a really good sign. But I mean, clearly, we still have a long way to go. One of our recently formed special interest groups is the 50 plus special interest group because of concerns of ageism within our industry, which is valid. I know a lot of older game developers who have struggled with being credited and taken seriously because of their age. And for some reason, some people think that only younger people can be good game developers and older people are out of touch, which clearly isn't the case at all. Having that knowledge and experience is very important.
The fact that we don't understand TikTok has nothing to do with any of this. It is.
I'm getting to that point. I'm getting to that point where I look at Twitch chats and they have all of these emotes going up, and there's clearly an entire culture based around it. And I just do not get it. It makes me feel really old.
It's like, I don't mean, what do you mean that character is offensive? I don't even know what we're doing here. That's the catch. So, being one of those older gamers, and I still have several years before I qualify for the over 50 spot, but I'm close. The advantage that those of us that I want to make sure that all of us old people realize is the move to digital has actually helped us in many ways, because now we have a better chance of getting our voice out there, because it is frustrating. And bluntly, the reason I started the Powell Group 10 years ago was because I was tired of interviewing for jobs that, ended up going to somebody 20 years younger than me, and it wears on you, and you do start to feel completely like disenfranchised. And am I even needed in this industry anymore? But the growth of digital and how we can be anywhere and, get a voice out and get feedback out there, it's actually helped us in some ways remind people that we do know shit. There are things that we can help with. I mean, we're not going to be optimizing your TikTok channel or anything like that, and I'm sure some of us can. I can't. But there is a new way for us to share what we started. I mean, what we know, and it doesn't rely on flying halfway around the world to do it. And there are more opportunities to do it. And that's one of the good things out there that I've personally enjoyed as an older gamer and an older person in the industry. So education is a big part of what you all do at the IGDA.
Yeah, knowledge and oversight is one of our pillars.
Yeah, exactly. How do you, beyond the webinars, are there new ways that you're looking to get stuff out there? How can people help share this knowledge that we do have that we want to get in front of everybody else?
Yeah, I think that our webinars are obviously super great. For me, I have a hard time watching videos. I'm like an extremely impatient person, and I have a hard time watching movies even, which probably makes me seem like I can't focus, but I just have a hard time sitting down and watching something for an hour plus. So I prefer, and I think we actually have really good quality white papers, and we have new white papers and best practice recommendations coming out fairly consistently. If you subscribe to the IGDA newsletter, which you can find again on our website under resources, there are really great resources that are constantly coming out. One of them that came out recently was a human resources policy guidelines. And it is the outline for anyone who is starting a company or has a company to create a thorough set of human resource policies to ensure that you're preventing harassment within the workplace, that you are defining all the things that you need to define, from information about your office to how workplace relationships are either allowed or disallowed, and other things like that, to ensure that you are providing your employees with all of the information, resources they need to confidently pursue their employment.
Hold on, I'm adding this to the screen so people know where they're going. And I had a question in there somewhere, but the dog started barking, and now that's completely gone as well. I have no idea what I was going to ask you. All right, hold on. Focusing. That's me. Give us something. Help me out here, Renee. I'm trying to type and do this.
No, that's fine. Okay, yeah. So I highly recommend checking out our resources. You can even find one that I contributed. If you are interested in community management, community moderation, or virtual reality communities, we actually have a social virtual reality best practices white paper that talks about the different types of moderation, community, and other management techniques to ensure that you're reducing harassment within your community and empowering those within their community to make it the best possible experience for everyone that you can. And I'm a programmer, actually. So if you read it, it comes from a very technical approach of how you can implement certain systems, not telling you the code of the implementation, but telling you how that they would function, as well as talking about the pros and cons of various systems, because some systems can be abused, and understanding that they can be abused and taking that into consideration when you're developing the systems and reviewing them once they have been implemented can be extremely important to ensure that those systems work properly, that the community is working well with them, and that no one is abusing them. Now, I say that this applies beyond virtual reality because clearly a lot of moderation and community systems aren't limited to the virtual space. So that's just one aspect. So even if you're not doing social VR, there's a lot of really great information. And we have tons of papers like that. We actually have like hundreds of papers.
All right. So I remember what it was now. So part of the reason we started this channel, and then, you know, everything that has sprung from IGB since then, is because we do a yearly survey as well, checking in with publishers and developers. And one of the things that completely shocked me, because, you know, I'm a business person, I expect people to read white papers. That was the first phase of all of this. Was I realized that we had knowledge to share, and I didn't know how to get it out there. And so, being a business person, I started writing white papers. One of the things that I realized, and you may have realized, is people don't read white papers. That's the I rarely read white papers, and I wrote the damn things, you know. So when we did one of our surveys, it was a couple of years ago, that said, how do you prefer to consume knowledge? Overwhelmingly, it was like 60-70% of the respondents were like video. And so that's what we started doing. So, I mean, that would be
I'm the odd one out, clearly.
Yeah, I know exactly. You know, it's because at the time I was like, I don't sit down and, you know, watch YouTube to figure out how to do something. But clearly, a lot of people younger than me do. If there's ways that we can help you, I mean, I would highly recommend, you know, trying to convert some of that to the webinars. And if there's ways that we can help you do that, I'm more than happy to do it. But that's just one of the things that I learned. And because it's like, I've been doing this for a long time, I have my ways of doing things, and it's a little shocking sometimes to figure out that, oh wait, that's not what people had in mind. And so I know it's hard. I mean, it's hard for us to find all these different ways to reach developers. It's probably the hardest part of doing the stuff on, you know, indie game business, is I simply don't know how to get it out there in front of people all the time and say, hey, look, we're doing this. It's free. And I know that y'all have some of the same struggles as well. You just have the advantage of having like 20 or 30 years of the IGDA behind you to help with it as well. But I think the move to digital, in some ways, I mean, despite the fact that it's really shitty why we had to move to it, but the move to digital has opened up, you know, a lot of avenues here. Like Whitlock said, you know, now he knows that there's a group in Estonia for the IGDA. So it's awesome like that. All right. So question, what's the white paper that hits closest to home that you or someone else wrote?
Gosh, that's hard. I think one that's really important is the game crediting standards, because I've heard so many game developers complain about not being properly credited on projects that they were part of. You know, it's really rough when someone is part of a 4-year development cycle and they spend 3 years on the team and then they leave the team and they're not listed in the credits at all. I think that that's really actually quite cruel. And so even though it's not like a particularly emotional white paper, you know, this is very, very straightforward. Here is a crediting standard for making sure that game developers get proper credits for their work. I think that is one that kind of speaks most to me, because it really and truly helps provide an answer to a big problem with our industry, which is proper crediting of people's efforts.
I wholeheartedly agree. And it bothers me greatly that people why do you think it's still done? Is it animosity? Is it the stigma that if you weren't with the team when it crossed the finish line, then you don't count? I mean, why do you think this is still a thing?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a lot of reasons. Like perhaps if you're no longer employed at that company, they are concerned legally for using your name on something, because you might, you know, say that you don't want it. It's easier to just not include you. It could be, yeah, animosity. It could be like, well, they left, so screw them. Or it could just be oversight. You know, a lot of times credits are not put together until the very end of development, and they might just list the current team and not everyone who's worked on the project previously. So regardless of the reason behind it, it's still definitely a significant problem. And it's so important to ensure that developers who have put their time and effort into a project are properly credited for that work, because as anyone who has applied to a job has seen, having titles, shipped titles, is considered extremely important, which I also have a little issue with, because just because you worked on an MMO for 4 years that didn't end up launching doesn't mean you're a worse game developer than someone who's worked on, 4 quick mobile titles that came out. So that's another discussion. But yeah, I think that proper crediting is so very important.
So this is one of those topics that inevitably leads to, we should unionize, when a lot of people don't realize that there actually are unions. They're just not in the US. Is the crediting issue something that we see more in specific territories, or is it pretty much a global thing?
We haven't done specific research on that. So with our launch of our industry standards, we actually have created a reporting system where we can get reports from developers who do not feel like they are being properly credited. And then we reach out to the companies who have received those reports, talk to them about the issue, and then record their response. Whether they don't respond to us, they say that they're making changes or whatever else the response is. And then we record that so it's an accessible database. So if you're saying, hey, IGDA, I am looking at working for AAA company 12, do they have any issues with crediting? We'd say, yeah, we've received 2 reports, but turns out both of them were resolved and the people are now being properly credited. Or they have a 3rd report where we reached out to them about some improper crediting, and they said that the crediting doesn't meet their internal standards and that person will not be credited.
All right. So that whole process is something that I was very excited to see come around this year. Can you talk more about that? Because it brings accountability to companies who, I mean, let's be frank, for 30 years haven't had any.
Right.
Can you go into a little more detail on what you all are doing there and how it works?
Yeah, so we've created some very basic standards for the game industry, the crediting standards, ethics standards as well, and a bit on event diversity that doesn't quite fit. But the process is, if someone feels that a company that they are working with is in violation of those standards, they can submit a report to the IGDA. The IGDA then takes that report and anonymizes it, and then reaches out to the companies that are involved and informs them of the report and asks them for any responses, while providing them with resources to help them address the issue. So if it is an ethics issue, we provide them with our ethics resources and recommendations. If it's a crediting issue, we provide them with our crediting standards and talk to them about ways to resolve that. And then we record those reports and the responses to them anonymized in a database, or at least we make it accessible in an anonymized way in the database. And then if any IGDMer reaches out to us with a certain company that they would like to look at, we will provide them with the anonymized reports and the responses. Or if a member of the press reaches out to us about a specific company, we will also provide those anonymized reports.
So,
now,
go ahead. Sorry.
The 2 core key things of that is, we are not creating an open database where you can query every single report. You have to come to us about a specific company, and then we will provide the reports for that company itself. And the intent here is not punishment. It is, yes, accountability, but also working with those companies to inform them of potential issues and help them resolve those issues. The main part of this that we are focused on is empowering companies to overcome these issues, not not the stick, right? We're trying to help them. We're not trying to hurt them for doing wrong.
All right. So Neil from Twitch had a question regarding crediting. What's the IGDA doing for those publishers who don't offer any credits in games? And I asked for clarification and pointed out some publishers have no credit in any of their games, including 2 larger ones.
That is not something that we have addressed at this point in time, but I think it is something that definitely could warrant that. I think that not all games can easily support in-game crediting, and localization of credits can be a difficult task. But I think that having crediting listed in some public manner is extremely important, even if it's not within the game itself. As great as it is to, at the end of a game, see your name scroll, it is more important that you are publicly acknowledged in some manner for your efforts. That is a great point, though, and that is something that we can definitely look into addressing more thoroughly in 2021. And I will put that in our backlog there. And I understand that very well. I will admit that I have worked on multiple titles where there were no credits within them, so I am not credited in the title itself. And certainly, I didn't find that very nice. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that should be addressed.
All right, I'm just going to cut through it and ask, is it frustrating sometimes that, you and the IGDA can put all of these standards together, but it's kind of like the UN, you don't really have any way of enforcing them other than public punishment if you wanted to go that way?
Gosh. I guess to an extent, it can be frustrating that we work hard to create standards and those standards just aren't like automatically followed at that point. But there are so many efforts that we are a part of that have massively positive effects on developers, that I don't get too frustrated just because we're doing so much. Now, if we were like an industry standards group and our main focus was industry standards and implementing industry standards and making sure that people were following those industry standards, that would be one thing. But that is just one component of the entire suite of great efforts and initiatives and programs that the IGDA does to support and empower developers. So I see the standards that we're creating and this reporting system as tools to improve the industry. And yeah, so I'm not too frustrated about it.
No, it is. I mean, and trust me, I know all about trying to do too much at once and being all over the place. And you do a lot of times have to remember that you've done good for folks before you get too caught up in the fact that it's like, hey, we're doing this. Why is nobody listening? But it is one of those things that I see a lot. And I'm like, why can't we call them out or along the same lines? And sometimes we do, not we as in the IGDA and my little podcast here, but sometimes these companies do get called out publicly. And then you deal with the challenge of, is what did they actually do what they're getting called out for? And so, yeah, I know. I want to ask, because it is something that it's like, it's one of those just really frustrating things about this industry. It's like, why, for a big company, being able to list the credits in multiple languages should not be a big deal. This is something that isn't rocket science. You're not having to, hard code a bunch of stuff in there. You're literally just been like, hey, where is this stuff? Translate it, put it out there so people can get credit. Awesome. Spammers from followers here, for followers. So Nightwolf had a question up here. So how do you apply to post your own research papers for the IGDA? If people have stuff that they've done and they want to share it, is there a process for that?
Yeah, we actually just have a contact us form on our website. You can even email me or info at igda.org right there at the bottom of this page, which is now covered up by that note, but that's okay.
Hold
Info
on.
at
I can
igda.org.
fix that.
It's okay.
I'm trying to get rid of
Yeah,
spammers.
we're open to publishing any research paper or other paper that meets our minimum standards. We're not a scientific journal, so we don't have a review panel per se, but we do have a review process where we evaluate the quality and tone of any paper prior to publishing it. So as long as you pass through that, that review process, then we would be happy to host your research paper on the IGDA resource library.
Are there any certain papers or areas that you want to bulk up, that you want to have more stuff come in, that you need more resources on, basically?
I'm of the opinion that we always need more resources in every category, particularly as someone who likes papers myself. I think that, well, I can tell you that the IGDA headquarters is focusing on creating papers towards ethical, sustainable, and positive business practices. So, creating diverse, positive culture companies is really important. Creating sustainable companies, handling funding and sustainable growth properly, I think is very important. When you look at the resources provided to game developers and widely available online, you find many discipline-based resources, but outside of how to do a pitch or how to manage a project, you don't actually find a lot of business management resources. And we think that's a huge weakness within the industry. We want to ensure better business sustainability because that gives people better career stability. And it also ensures that those companies are being created and their cultures are being cultivated in a manner that will be more inclusive and help the mental health and the diversity of games overall.
It's like I frequently say about this show. It's like, we can't stop Activision from laying off 800 people. There's nothing that we sitting over here can do about it. They're going to do it. They do it every time they ship a title. It's part of their world. But we can give those 800 people the tools that they need to start their own studios, to do their own thing if they want to. And that is, a prime pillar of why we started doing this. What do you look at as your proudest moment, your most significant new thing since you've, taken the head of the IGDA, and it's right here since you became executive director?
Gosh, there's so much. There's like the cute, positive external answer of truly it's all of the programs and resources that we've made over the last year. In particular, our mentorship program, I think, is really wonderful just because I get to hear the stories of the developers that it affects and the positive outcomes from that program and those mentorships. I guess my true answer, and this is going to be really boring, is the IGDA over the past year and a half has become a much more operationally efficient organization. And due to that, it gives us more time and more overhead to invest in all of these projects and initiatives. But saying that we're more operationally efficient isn't like a huge external thing that we can show aside from the launch of all these programs. I mean, we've never launched so many programs and initiatives successfully in such a short period of time. And I think that it's truly impressive, and it speaks so much to the amazing volunteers and leaders and our board and our staff members and our IGDA members who have invested in the organization. So I'm just really, really proud of all that progress that we've made.
So y'all just started, I saw it in the last newsletter, where we can donate memberships, gift
Yes.
memberships. Is
We
that for all the different types of passes, or is it, I mean, can we do that for student memberships as well, or is that just main memberships? How's that broken down?
Right now it's standard 1-year memberships. If there is a demand for being able to gift student memberships, we certainly can set that up as well. But yes, as of Giving Tuesday, so as of last week, for the first time ever, you can purchase IGDA memberships for your friends. So if you're looking for a Christmas present for your game developer friends, you can get them a 1-year IGDA membership for $60. And it is, like I said, we have mentorship programs now. We're running this wonderful holiday cheer hackathon. We have a ton of resources, all of these wonderful white papers. Admittedly, some of the best white papers are restricted to only IGDA members. You do get a benefit in terms of those resources with IGDA membership. And then, of course, we just have literally thousands of dollars of discounts a year for both in-person and virtual conferences, for software, for Unity licenses, for Dell computers and laptops, and so much more. For only $60 a year, we are probably the cheapest, like the lowest priced, the most inexpensive professional association that you can be a part of. And the reason we keep that price so low is because we're trying to build a community, a huge, wonderful, nerdy game development family that all supports each other. And with over 10,000 members, we truly are that.
All right, so I've got you here for like another 8 minutes, and so I'm going to hit the selfish questions at this point. But we can make it sound like it's for everybody. How can we, those of us who are running chapters, those of us who have been around the industry, how can we better reach out to colleges and universities and even high schools, to students in general, and explain to them and help them, get a path into the industry? Because one of the biggest things that I see, even with some of these universities and their game development tracks, is it's very much based on design, coding, and art. And there's not a lot of talk or a lot of education. It's like, if you like other stuff like PR or, production, there's also roles for you in this angle. How can we better educate the students that these options are out there?
So one of the things that we also did this last year is change how our IGDA Career Center works. Now, if you go to our Career Center page, instead of taking you straight to our job board, it actually takes you to a landing page that is full of resources for people starting their careers, including a huge list of all of the potential career opportunities and what they mean within the game industry. So if you are interested in reaching out to students and giving them resources to start their career, go to that webpage. We're actually working on additional resources to add to that right now. That's actually, some of our board members are working together on a project to further expand those Career Center resources. So I would direct them to that page. We also have a really handy, like, 2-pager, like double-sided 1-pager on all of the IGDA resources that apply particularly to students. So you can find that on our student membership page or on our membership page. And if you want, I can just email it to anyone who is interested as well, particularly if you're an IGDA chapter or special interest group leader. We have a whole suite of resources that you can use to inform students or professional game developers of the resources available to them to help them with their careers.
So I just pulled this up because I didn't know this existed. This is awesome. There's it's completely outlined as the door problem, and it walks through. This is a great article. I'll post it up in here. I mean, even I've got a 9-year-old, and it's funny to me that if you go into his classroom and you ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? When we were all growing up, it was doctor, fireman, policeman,
veterinarian.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's all like, I want to be a YouTuber. And so yesterday, that's completely, everything that they want to do. It's like, I want to be a YouTuber. Yesterday, I was showing him what, Indy and I see on the back end of these conferences and, what we're using to actually run it and play with all the screens and all this stuff. And he was just like in awe. And he's like, well, that's what I want to do. And I said, well, that's a producer. That's not, this is different. And so a lot of it is, just letting people know that these options exist because they don't realize it, and that's been one of the things that we've tried to do up here with the universities is say, look, we've got a game development club or we've got the IGDA meeting, and this is not just for coders and artists. This is for a lot of other people as well. You're doing a fantastic job, Renee. And I know I hit you with some hard questions and some uncomfortable ones, but that's my job too, So
all of your questions were fine.
I try to keep it, somewhat interesting. Renee is kind enough to be on our Discord. So if you've got, any further questions and, you want to know more, one, the IGDA does have a ton of really, really good resources in there. And there's a lot of people on the Discord who are very willing to help and answer, the even most basic things, because one of the good, it's somewhat unspoken parts of being in the IGDA is you wouldn't be in it or pay that $60 or anything if you didn't actually care about the people in the industry. So it's a very, very supportive group. We want you to succeed. We want to make sure that you're happy and you're being treated properly in the industry, and you even know what your options are, because that's a problem as well in the industry. It's very fragmented. It's all across the world, different cultures, different countries, all this sort of stuff. Sometimes you don't even realize what your options are. And so you all do a fantastic job of getting it out there and letting everybody know and supporting the industry in general. And we do appreciate it very much.
Thank you. That's very kind. We definitely do everything we can to support and empower game developers.
And maybe 2021 is not going to suck as much as 2020 did. And,
I feel like it just that has to be the case. I mean, certainly there is always lower to fall, but it's already gone to a ridiculous level. So I feel like we're going to be on recovery from here.
I remember 7 years ago, it's like I tweeted and I was like, okay, I forget what year it was. It was like another just like shitty year. I mean, nothing on the scale of this, but I was like, okay, new upcoming year. This is not a challenge. You're not trying to outdo the previous year. So, that's our warning to 2021. This is not a fucking competition. Okay. Just because the last one was bad, you don't have to make it worse.
New miserable high score. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we're going to roll this one down and get to our next speaker. Joni Kraut from Women in Games International is going to be discussing why diversity is good for business. And so I know that we talk a lot about we need more diverse, teams and more diversity in the industry, but sometimes it kind of ends there. And so we're going to explain in very plain terms what this means and why it's good. So give us a moment. We're going to roll this broadcast down, and Indy is up and with us, and he's got Joni ready on the other side. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you, Renee.